Northwest Florida's first brewery and what I think killed it. Stick around to the end to find out why it still matters today. Hi there, I'm Pensacola historian Joe Vinson. This spot on Barrancas Avenue was once the site of the Spearman Brewing Company, which opened in 1935. This was shortly after the end of Prohibition, when a flood of regional breweries were opening across the country. The founder was Guy Spearman, who previously owned the Crystal Ice Company starting in 1929. Its headquarters were actually right across the street, but you would probably recognize more the distinctive mini station that Crystal Ice opened at Davis and Jordan Streets in 1931. Back then, it made a lot of sense for an ice manufacturer to get into the beer business, because beer had to be refrigerated for storage and transportation. That's why most of America's early breweries were up north. I'll talk more about refrigeration some other time, because it's really so key to everything from the fishing industry to air conditioning. There's basically no modern Florida without it. So, after a couple of years of distributing other companies' beers, Spearman opened this very slick and modern brewery right here. Their slogan was, "The pure water does it," and there's a reason they chose that. A decade prior, at the height of the Florida land boom, every part of the state was trying to differentiate themselves to attract investors. Pensacola city leaders sent samples of local water to government chemists, and they said it was the equivalent of distilled water. Ads in 1925 boasted that Pensacola had the, quote, purest water in the world, and those claims persisted well after the land boom went bust. It's no surprise then that Spearman leaned heavily into the pure water thing for marketing purposes. Their logo was a Spanish conquistador, maybe Ponce de Leon, standing by the Fountain of Youth with a glass of beer. Their signature product, the Straight 8 beer, so named for having an 8% alcohol content at a time when beers had previously been limited to 3.2%, was, quote, made with Pensacola famous water that was said to be, quote, 99.993% pure. The water was drawn on site by two wells located right out front here, with a lane pump that could pull up 1,000 gallons every minute from the underground reservoir. There's a lot more history associated with the Spearman Brewery, but I'm going to fast forward a good bit. By the late 50s, the beer's reputation was definitely in decline. The main selling point in ads seemed to be that it was cheap, significantly cheaper than national beers because of the transportation costs, but also cheaper than other regional beers. And yes, that is a 4th of July ad featuring a Confederate flag and what seems to be Robert E. Lee. In 1960, Mr. Spearman sold the brewery to New Yorker Louis Hertzberg, owner of Metropolis Brewing Company and several other breweries. In a statement about the sale, Hertzberg said, quote, Spearman, with its fine water resources, is in a perfect geographical position for producing truly fine beer. The new owners made a lot of changes, including apparently a completely new beer recipe. They started selling beer produced at the Spearman plant under different Metropolis-owned labels. So maybe the idea was that all the beers should taste the same? The Hertzbergs sold all their U.S. operations in 1964 to focus on their brewery in Israel, and production at the Pensacola plant ceased. Much of the equipment was removed and sold off, but there were no takers for the property itself. The skeletal steel frame of the building was finally demolished in 1987 after a person hanged himself from it. So, where did it all go wrong? My dad was stationed at NAS Pensacola in the early 60s, and he remembered that they would give away Spearman beer for free. He said it was the worst beer he had ever tasted. Was that because of the new recipe, or was it something else? I have a theory about that. You see, this brewery, where they were pumping up all this underground water from the on-site wells, it was located on Barrancas, just north of Main Street. And what was right on the other side of Main Street? Hey, look at that. It's the Pensacola Creosoting Company, what today is known as the American Creosote Works Superfund site. Starting in 1902, this plant used creosote distilled from coal tar to treat wood for marine pilings, utility poles, railroad ties, etc., making them resistant to pests and natural decay. After 1950, until its closure in 1981, the plant switched to using pentachlorophenol as the main preservative. Both are associated with higher rates of cancer and other adverse health effects in humans when absorbed through contact or consumption, which can happen when the compounds are leached into soil and groundwater. The creosote works discharged water into on-site unlined ponds until 1970. That is the entire operational span of the Spearman Brewery. Now, I don't claim any kind of scientific expertise to know whether these harmful chemicals made it into the beer itself, but it doesn't seem ideal. This is relevant today because despite being placed on the EPA's national priorities list in 1983, the American Creosote Works site still has a lot of cleanup work to do. But the city of Pensacola recently announced that despite a funding gap, contaminated soil will start being removed from neighborhood properties starting this July. Long-term goals for the property after remediation include a possible park. In the meantime, be mindful about your exposure to soil and water in the area, and I definitely wouldn't drink any unopened cans of Spearman beer you might find on eBay. For how much? Remember that Spearman logo with the conquistador? For my Lost Pensacola series of vintage posters, I created this ad for Spearman beer that says, "It's the fountain they really wanted." Thanks again to Bart for being my model. The look was inspired by this Budweiser campaign from the late 50s and early 60s. You can check out the whole project at lostpensacola.com, where my 2026 calendars are now discounted. Thanks for watching, follow for more videos, and comment with ideas for future topics.